everybody. Welcome to Embracing Your Season. My name is Paige Klingenpeel, and I'm so excited that you're joining me today. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about HomeWord. HomeWord sponsors this podcast. HomeWord is a not-for-profit ministry that serves marriages and family all over the world. And guess what, friends? You can become a partner with them. Whether it's financial or it's through prayer, you get an opportunity to impact the marriages and families of people across the globe, all because of all the things that HomeWord does. So I'm a huge fan. Before I even started this podcast, Dr. Jim Burns has been someone that has been just phenomenal, a mentor to me through his books and his ministry at HomeWord. So definitely check it out. Of course, any gift that you supply will sponsor Embracing Her Season, as well as all the ministry opportunities that HomeWord offers. So check out HomeWord and check out my podcast. You can find it on the HomeWord webpage. You can also find it on the YouTube channel. We would love for you to check it out. And again, be a partner with what they are doing across the world for families and marriage. Now, let's go into today's episode. I'm sure you parents are all out there. You understand what this is about. It is summertime. Summertime is starting. School is stopping. This is one of those times we're both excited as parents, but we're also pretty nervous. For me personally, summertime, when I think of it, I get to sleep in a little bit, and that's a bonus. But then I'm also anticipating all the phone calls I am going to get from my kids because they are home with their siblings. I got 4 kids, 2 in high school, 1 in middle school, and 1 in elementary. So they usually stay home. My oldest has a job, so sometimes she's in and out. But my other kids are home by themselves. And if your kids are anything like my kids, they can be angels, certainly. But I remember years, and I'm talking years, friends, where my kids will text me and call me and say, one is not sharing this toy, another one ate their lunch, another one locked them out of their own room. Like, I could tell you stories upon stories of the conflict. And can you relate to this? I remember growing up even with my brother. It was just me and my brother. We were in the middle of the country, so we had no neighbors to play with. And I'm telling you, it was a rough go sometimes during the summer because we just had each other. But what do siblings do? We fight with one another and we come alongside each other in such ways that are annoying. And so then it becomes this big fight. So I do remember calling my mom and telling her that my brother was being a pain. But friends, back in this day, this was the phone that was attached to the wall. So at any point, my brother could hang up the phone because it wasn't cell phones. I couldn't just run around, our yard and flee from him. No, instead, he can come up and hang up the phone. Or the worst is when you're dialing and he pops on and he starts pressing numbers too. So then you don't even know who you're calling at that point. We have been through this, friends. We know this is a generational thing. Summer break is awesome, but it can also bring a lot of stress. So today's episode is all about how do you mitigate the stress with your kids home alone while you're at work, and how do you make it the best summer for them ever. So let's go into a few of the things that you can start implementing, planning even now on the first couple of weeks of summer break so that it hopefully equips you and your kids to have a best summer. So the first one is avoiding meltdowns. Nobody wants to have their phone ringing off the hook when they're at work or they're out running errands because their kids don't know how to play nice with one another. So here's a couple of things that have worked for me and some things that have worked for my friends, because also my kids can sometimes be feral and they don't always respond to the things that other people respond to. A couple of really great sites to look up is Pinterest. I love Pinterest. They come up with ideas. Sometimes the ideas are like, wow, how does that work for your family? Because it certainly doesn't work for mine. But there are some good ideas that I could try once in a while. So the first one is come up with a bored list. How many times have your kids said, I'm bored. I have nothing to do. There's nothing to do in this house. I mean, that's probably on repeat, especially during the summertime. Coming up with a bored list. And this could be something that you can create, or again, Pinterest has great ideas as well, is when they say they are bored, tell them to go and reference this board list. We like to put it on our fridge so that it's a central location so they can just go and look at it. So the board list could be, did you go outside today? Did you do your chores today? Did you make yourself a snack? Or did you text a friend? Could you have ridden your bike around the neighborhood? There's just different opportunities. Of course, they have to be age appropriate for your kids, but it provides examples of what your child can do. Because oftentimes when they're in that bored state, they're not thinking clearly. They literally have this global perspective that there's nothing in this world that can satisfy them except, doing what's on their wish list, which is most likely hanging out with their friends or watching TV. Those type of things, which is an instant gratification, but it's also not teaching them to surpass the boredom and being a problem solver. So we provide the list so that their brain doesn't have to work as hard and they get to see what are the different options. You coming up with that will be so helpful for them because now you can just redirect. And when we redirect and they come back and be like, well, I did all of those things. Well, then you're going to have to find something else, kiddo. I love the phrase asked and answered. So when our kids come to us and say, okay, well, I'm still bored. I'll be like, well, did you check the list? And they'd be like, well, I don't want to do any of those things. I was like, well, I already gave you my answer. And so it's not going to change. Asked and answered. So that usually helps promote them and prompt them to go and do something else because they're not going to get a rise out of me. They're not going to get what they want ultimately, and they need to figure it out on their own. So life lesson, right? So check out Pinterest. I think that's a great thing. Another thing that Pinterest can do too is coming up with just day themes. So sometimes it can be like a pool party, even though you don't have a pool, like we don't have a pool, we go and we get those like inflatable pools and we fill it up with water. That's going to be our pool day in the backyard. What about we have like a Mexican day where not only are we celebrating with the food from that culture, but maybe we can listen to some of the music of the Mexican culture so that we can learn a new way to dance. We can learn that off of YouTube. We can find ways to learn more about certain cultures so that now it's also a learning experience for them. But how fun is that like 3 times a week or 2 times a week, there's going to be a theme for the day. They can pick out new clothes, they can have fun activities, and it's all, of course, being pre-planned by you, but it gives them something else to kind of spice up the week. And again, Pinterest can come up with some ideas for that as well. Another one that we like to do in our house is no Wi-Fi until their chores are done. I know your kids are going to fight. I can already hear it, friends. Like I already know the fights I'm going to have with my kids about how they did their chores, but their siblings didn't. So the Wi-Fi needs to turn back on, but their sibling doesn't deserve the Wi-Fi. The best part is if you have a router and you have an app for your router, you can change your Wi-Fi password. And I know it's going to take a lot of creativity. Start coming up with tons of different Wi-Fi passwords now so that you can just go through your list later on. Is that my kids have to send me pictures that show that they have done their chore. And now as I'm saying this out loud, I'm totally thinking they might reuse the picture. So friends, we have to be more creative than our kids because they're super crafty, aren't they? They're sneaky. So we're going to have to ask them to take maybe different shots, different angles each day so they don't reuse the same picture. But things like we ask them to do the dishes or they have to do their laundry or they clean their room. We're saying these things need to be done on these certain days so that you can receive the Wi-Fi. Because the Wi-Fi, that's the currency in our home. Our kids have their phones or they have their video games. Those are things that they want to participate in. But they have to have the Wi-Fi password in order to do those things. So again, get that app if you have a router for your Wi-Fi, and then make sure you're consistent with having them do certain chores before they get access to the Wi-Fi. And then that leads me to other things like instead of just staying inside on their phones or playing their video games, telling them to go outside. The Dollar Tree or Dollar General has such cool things that you can do activities outside, whether it's, and I'm talking like even for high school students, I love buying chalk and just doing pictures outside with sidewalk chalk. There's bubbles. You're never too old for bubbles, friends. And there's tons of other water activities that you can do. That you can find all of these things at the dollar store or even the dollar aisle in Target, which if you're like me, you probably spend more than $1 in the Target aisle. I end up spending maybe like $30. My husband's not a fan, but you know what? I rationalize it because there's good stuff in that dollar aisle. But having all of these games and opportunities outside then helps promote your kids being outside. And that's what we want for them. We want them to be active. We want them to be outside the home. And hopefully if you live in a neighborhood, then other kids can participate in that as well. Okay, and the other one that I'm already anticipating big fights about, and maybe you can relate to this, is my kids saying there is nothing to eat in the house. All right, I just heard a few amens through the podcast. You know what I'm talking about. We can stock our pantry full of snacks and wonderful things that they can cook, but they'll always complain that there's never food for them to eat. So the way that I have helped remedy this is have them help me meal plan. Of course, they're going to want pure junk. We do some junk in our house. That's certainly true. Junk food, it fuels the nations, does it not? It's really good, but it's also not good for our growing bodies. So what I do is we balance this. Sure, we can have some Doritos in the house, but we're going to make sure we're going to have some fruit that you can eat as well. Having our kids come up with a meal plan, and then we actually write it down. My husband is great at this, where he's like, Monday is going to be peanut butter and jelly, and then Doritos, and then you can have this Sunkist. Tuesday is going to be mac and cheese and blueberries. So when we have that plan of action and they helped us create that meal plan, now they're invested. Now they're a part of it. And when they say that there's no food in the house, well, then you can be like, hello, you helped me create this. Like, if you want something different, then we'll plan for that next week. So there's some autonomy there where they get to choose, but then they also get to partner with us in some of those meal planning ways as well. So let's talk about family fun. So these seasons, these months during the summer is such a great opportunity to have a lot of experiences with our kids. We know that the sunlight, it stays out longer, right? Here in Indiana, it feels like it's like 10 o'clock by the time the sun sets. And because the kids don't have to necessarily get up early in the morning, we're able to do more in the evening after work and spend time with them. I prefer to be outside. So we've had like a gas fire pit and we have long chairs and we just go outside and we hang out. We'll play card games, stuff like that. But it's been one of those things where I've really tried to be intentional of how am I building this family bonding time. So there's some ideas that you can come up with. Of course, doing the things in the evening can always be great. Coming up with some games. And again, you don't have to purchase all of these things. Sometimes it could just be an app on your phone. Like we play Heads Up, if you're familiar with that. That's a free app on your phone that you can play with your kids. You can even buy Uno at the dollar store and play some of that. And that's a good age-appropriate game as well. Other things that you can do for family fun is check out your parks and rec. So we have one here in Indiana that they send us actually a magazine, or we can look up online, and there's tons of activities. There's food, there's festivals that are happening in our city. All of these things are listed on Parks and Rec. And so now we're able to actually schedule out some of these fun activities for our family as a whole. So check that out, see what's around your town. And maybe it's not in your town, maybe it's in a surrounding town. But when you start seeing all of the different scheduled potentials, that starts filling up your calendar in a way that then you can supplement around it, making sure that you're having fun activities with your kids. Some other things that I really enjoy doing with my family is something I have coined the term family co-op. So I'm not home every single day. I get the day off on Friday and Saturday. Those are my days off. So the rest of the week, either my kids can be with their friends in the neighborhood, or what we have found is that we kind of family co-op with other families, especially when the kids were younger, is that we trade off kids. So I can take their families and their kiddos maybe on a Friday and we get to do something fun at my house. And they get to take some of my kids on a Monday or a Wednesday, whatever works best for their schedule. Now we're sharing time. And it's the same with my kids, is like they tend to have more fun when they're around their friends than if they're just home with their siblings. So if we start creating more of a rhythm of on this week, you're going to hang out with this friend's family, and then on this week, they're going to come back to our house, that's going to create some new rhythms in your day-to-day during the summer months also. And then finally, just getting active, getting outside. I love walking. I'm not a big runner. I think people that run, good for you. We are proud of you. You've done great work. Keep it up. Me personally, like it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to witness, and it's probably not a good thing for my body. So walking is my thing. I love to walk around. And what I have found is that when I involve my family in walking, sometimes my kids actually communicate more with me when we are walking and talking than they would if I were just sitting down in our homes. So offering the opportunity of maybe just taking one child or maybe two kids on a nightly walk so that that's our special time together. That creates something that is memorable, but then a potential for our kids to have conversations with us that they may not otherwise do. Of course, for my husband and I, that could be another activity that we get to do because we can leave our kids home by themselves. So we get to just walk around the block and we get to invest in one another and debrief about our days. So getting outside is so important, as well as it is just good for your body. The smell of fresh air and the sun and how all of that affects our mood is really, really important also. So these are some of my suggestions, guys, of how you can make your summer break the best ever and how it's going to be different this year because you are intentional with your family, you're intentional with your activities, and hopefully, and we are praying this over you, that you won't receive calls every 10 minutes from your kids about how they're fighting. So friends, I hope that you have a fabulous summer break, your kids enjoy it with you, and you build memories. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Embracing Your Season. I would love to hear from you, maybe hear about a guest that you would like on the show, or maybe a topic that you would like for me to discuss. So hit me up at paigeklingenpeel@gmail.com. And of course, we have a show every single week, so make sure you're tuning in, subscribe, review, give us all the stars so that you can stay up to date on all things Embracing Your Season. We'll see you next week.